Okay, welcome to episode 12 of the Jewish Life Cycle class. Today's class is sponsored anonymously by an extremely terrific person. The merit of our learning should be merit for this person and for all of us, and should only lead to good things. This is a class on dating, and some of you are maybe in the parsha, some of you are not, and might not even know anybody who is. And it's still part of the Jewish life cycle class, and we need to know what we looked for, what we are looking for, what exactly is the goal, the end game in a marriage. I'm going to start a little unusually here today, uh, for uh, for better or for worse. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to read from a children's book, and not even a book that's in the Jewish literature canon. It's a book by Shel Silverstein, who, yes, biologically was Jewish, and he wrote this book in 1976, and the book was called "The Missing Piece." The Missing Piece. It's backwards for you, but you may wonder. Hey, listen, it says in the first pages, there's no part of this publication can be reproduced electronically or otherwise without permission from the publisher. But this is for educational purposes, so I am indeed allowed to read from it, even in a recording setting. Um, I'm not trying to sell this recording in any way. Anyway, so I don't know if you can see this. Okay, I'm going to try to make this legible. It was missing a piece. Wait, somebody's coming in. Let's wait. We can do that. Hello, welcome. We're reading a children's book. We're reading The Missing Piece by Shel Silverstein. And so anyway, it was missing a piece and it was not happy. So it set off in search of its missing piece. And as it rolled, it sang this song. Oh, I'm looking for my missing piece. I'm looking for my missing piece. Heidi ho, here I go, looking for my missing piece. Sometimes it baked in the sun. But then the cool rain would come down. And sometimes it was frozen by the snow, but then the sun would come and warm it again. And because it was missing a piece, it could not roll very fast, so it would stop to talk to a worm or smell a flower. And sometimes it would pass a beetle. And sometimes the beetle would pass it. And this was the best time of all. Try to remember this page.
What is that thing?
That's a butterfly.
Oh, okay.
Try to remember that page. And on it went over oceans. Oh, I'm looking for my missing piece, over land and over seas, so grease my knees and fleece my bees. I'm looking for my missing piece. Through swamps and jungles, up mountains, and down mountains. Until one day, lo and behold, I found my missing piece, it sang. I found my missing piece. So grease my knees and fleece my bees. I found my... Wait a minute, said the piece. Before you go greasing your knees and fleecing your bees, I am not your missing piece. I am nobody's piece. I am my own piece. And even if I was somebody's missing piece, I don't think I'd be yours. There's a better way to do this.
It's very sad.
Oh, it said sadly, I'm sorry to have bothered you. And on it rolled. It found another piece. But this one was too small. And this one was too big. This one was a little too sharp. And this one was too square. One time it seemed to have found the perfect piece, and it didn't hold it tight enough. and lost it. Another time, it held it too tightly and it broke. So on and on it rolled, having adventures, falling into holes, and bumping into stone walls. And then one day it came upon another piece that seemed to be just right. Hi, it said. Hi, said the piece. Are you anybody else's missing piece? Not that I know of. Well, maybe you want to be your own piece. I can be someone's and still be my own. Well, maybe you don't want to be mine. Maybe I do. Maybe you won't fit. Well, it fit. It fit perfectly. At last, at last. And away it rolled, and because it was now complete, it rolled faster and faster, faster than it had ever rolled before. So fast that it could not stop to talk to a worm or smell a flower. Too fast for a butterfly to land. But it could sing its happy song at last. It could sing, I found, sorry, at last it could sing, I found my missing piece. And it began to sing, I found my missing geese, I found my missing breeze, shall crease my meese and bleeze my drees, I found, oh my. Now that it was complete, it could not sing at all. Aha, it thought. So that's how it is. So it stopped rolling. And it set the piece down gently. And slowly rolled away. And as it rolled, it softly sang, oh, I'm looking for my missing piece. I'm looking for my missing piece. Heidi ho, here I go, looking for my missing piece. All right. What did we gain from this wonderful story?
I don't understand the butterfly.
You don't understand it's a butterfly effect. No, so this is, I think, a clear allegory, even though it's a children's book, it's a clear allegory, an extended metaphor for those of you who don't know what an allegory is. It's an allegory for the dating world and the dating life, because very often we're told that why are we dating? What's the purpose of all of this? To find your missing piece, to find the piece of yourself that you're missing, that you don't have. And the message here, and again, remember, this is not a Torah message yet. You'll see that there's a lot of truth in what he said, and a little bit not so true also in what he said. So take it, take it for what it's worth. And let's at least first understand what he's saying. He's saying his opinion, and this is, I remember 1976. I was a 1-year-old. So what he's saying is, and by the way, the book has been translated to all kinds of languages. I have it in Hebrew at home if anybody wants to borrow it. The message here is that you don't know what you're missing. You don't know what part of you you're supposed to fill up with your partner. How are you incomplete? You don't necessarily know when you go out into the dating world. And that's actually a huge problem, because very often what ends up happening is people find the wrong people. And they think they know what they're looking for, and they find something completely different. We all know all kinds of horror stories. In the Jewish world and in the non-Jewish world, I have a non-Jewish acquaintance who started teaching around the same time, and she was dating somebody for a long time, even before we met, and she got pregnant with his baby. They got married a little bit after that. They were married for like a year or two, and then they got divorced. Okay, so what happened? Why did they get married? Why didn't they get married earlier? If they would have gotten married earlier, would have they still been divorced? I don't know. Obviously, obviously they weren't right for each other. I know in the Jewish world, I know somebody who went to my yeshiva, got married, and about within a week of Sheva Brachot, they were divorced. In the week of Sheva Brachot. Okay, it's a stressful time, and she turned out to be not exactly what she'd been saying she was. Okay, whatever. That's neither here nor there. The point is, dating does not always end well, and it has a lot to do with what expectations are, and there's expectations from family and community and society in general, and you don't know where to go, you don't know where to turn. And it turned out all along your missing piece was a butterfly. You're perfectly happy with your butterfly in your nose. You don't need to go and find exactly what you think you're missing. That's the point of the book. And there's a lot of truth to it. Part of the truth is that's not why we're getting married. That's going to be significant. That's going to be kind of the point of today's class. But one of the falsehoods is why would you think that that's the end of the story? In fact, by the way, not to like burst anybody's bubble, but that's in case you're by a library anytime soon, that's not the end of the story. There's a sequel. There's at least one sequel. I think it's called The Missing Piece Meets the Big O, something like that. Anyway, whatever it is, so the missing piece isn't complete isn't completed with a butterfly. It's the whole life adventure that makes up your life. Which brings us to, why are we getting married? It's a very important question. In a recent book called Everyone's Entitled to My Opinion by David Orlovsky, more or less. It's a funny little book. He has a chapter there where he's asked by some yeshiva boys to give a class on marriage. And he's reluctant, et cetera, and eventually they twist his arm, they guilt him into giving a class on marriage. And the first question he asks them is this question that I just asked you. Why are you getting married? What's the point? What's your goal? And so, the boys are quiet. They don't know what to answer. So they say, we're getting married so we can have children. So basically he says, you're not looking for a girl then, you're just looking for good DNA, right? It doesn't matter who you marry, as long as she can carry on, you can carry on your descendants and carry your DNA to the next generation. So it doesn't matter why are you dating, just like, go to a geneticist and make up somebody or something. Make good material. You don't need a girl for that. He says, oh, that's not why. He says, some other kid picks up, raises his hand. He says, there's just too much to do in life. One person couldn't possibly do it all by himself. He needs a wife by his side. Beautiful answer, right? Wrong. He says, what you're talking about is a personal assistant. You don't want a wife. You want a personal assistant. You want somebody who does all your work with you, for you, whatever. You need a secretary. You need a maid, or I think there's a song in the 70s ago, a man needs a maid. So, all right. So that's not why we get married. Somebody else raised his hand and said, "Oh, I'm getting married because it's a mitzvah." Very nice. He says, simply propose to the first girl you meet and head right back to the base medrash. No need to waste time on anything like that. you're doing your mitzvah, you propose, that's all you have to do. That's your hishtadlut. That's all you have to do. That's why you're doing it. You're just doing it for the mitzvah. So he says, you know why we get married? Because you can learn a lot from the fact that when somebody gets married during the first week of Sheva Brachot, the shul, the congregation, does not say Tachanun when the Chatan is in the shul. Why is that? And besides, we're happy not to say Tachanun. Any reason not to say Tachanun is a good reason. So why don't we say Tachanun? So he says, because something very important happens when somebody gets married. And it's so important that it's actually the curse that Bilam wanted to create for the Jewish people that turned into a blessing. What was the curse that he was going to say? He was going to say that the Jewish people should not have happy families. And instead, that curse was turned into a blessing. And he said, Ma tovu ohalacha Yaakov mishkunatecha Yisrael. We build a home. We create a mishkan. And that is what marriage is supposed to be. And that's what we're looking for when we go dating. Class over. So class dismissed. So obviously different people are looking for different things. So there's not going to be any one class. I can't give advice that's going to completely clarify everything for everybody. However, we need to know. That's a different page. What it is that we're looking for when we're dating, and one of the things we're looking for is what the Torah calls an Ezer Kenegdo, right? When Hashem made for Adam, when He made Chava for him, it was very clear that it was because it was not good, says Hashem, for Adam to be levado, for man to be alone. Now, what does that mean? Does that mean like the missing piece who didn't have who was alone with the butterfly? That's not right. We're sad. We're sorry for somebody who has to go to the theater by themselves, has to go to events by themselves, sitting alone at the table by themselves. Is that what it means, that we don't want man to be alone? That's a bad thing? So that's not the entire goal. Remember, we said that the goal was to create a family, was to create not just a family. That doesn't always necessarily happen, but to create a home. And that home is that place where we talked about in other classes that has to do with the raising of the children. It has to do with, if there are children, we'll talk about all that as well eventually. But having guests, creating a home where people can come and feel comfortable, and that sort of exude this sort of spirit of holiness and care for others, etc. That's something that can be done by a husband and wife who fit each other well. Now, that does not mean that the husband and wife need to be, carbon copies of each other. Obviously, sometimes, as everybody here knows, sometimes opposites attract. Sometimes somebody, very often, in fact, in my experience, somebody who's very, meticulous about money marries somebody who's not, right? And then there's going to be arguments about money sometimes, but sometimes these arguments are actually very useful, very helpful, because the person who's not careful about money needs that sort of like penny pinching aspect in life. And then on the opposite end, the person who's like the penny pinchers, they're very frugal, doesn't want to spend any money, needs to be reminded that it's important to use money also. We're not trying to save it up and put it in our mattress till we die. We want to be able to use it and contribute and be give tzedakah, et cetera, et cetera. That's so you need both of those opposing forces. That's kind of the idea behind this this famous line that opposites attract. It's a very true statement. Now the Gemara in Sota tells us, and we've mentioned this Gemara when we started this class, that when a person is born, all the way back then, Hashem already tells who's going to be that person's zivug, who's going to be that person's soulmate, let's call it. Interestingly enough, in cursive Hebrew, if you look at the cursive Hebrew, zivug is spelled Zayin, Vav, Gimel. And in cursive, the Zayin and the Gimel look exactly alike, but they're mirror images of each other. Right? So they're like the opposites attract sort of idea. I've heard people say. Again, cursive. So that's I don't know how much stock you're going to put into that, but it's an interesting thing. Very often, unfortunately, from what I understand, when people start dating, especially nowadays, now I should back up a bit. I knew this was going to happen. The way we date nowadays, when I say we, is going to be very confusing to a lot of the people who are listening to this class, because we have all kinds of different ways of people meeting other people. What's called the traditional way of getting married, as was implied in the email I sent out today, the traditional way is through a matchmaker, through a shadchan. And so let me give you a little bit of the process of shadchanut, at least the way it used to be. Nowadays, I understand it's a little bit different, and I don't really know it so well yet, because my kids are not yet in the parsha, as far as I know. So here's how it used to work. Okay, a child with advice, hopefully from Rebbeim and parents, decides that they are ready for marriage. What does that mean? That means they're financially mature enough? Does that mean that they have a plan? Does that mean that they are good with kids? What does it mean? It depends on each individual situation. But for whatever reason, like I said, they got the advice from their parents, from the rebbeim, from their teachers, who know people who know them well, that they're ready to get married. They're ready to start dating. So what do? They should have an interview, ideally face to face, with a shadchan, with a matchmaker, who's supposed to eventually know them well. So it's not just an interview. It really should be also a Shabbat invitation. There should be some camaraderie. They should be able to sort of be able to understand the person's actual personality, because personality matters. And then, based on what the shadchan knows about this person, they should be able to, whether it's a girl or a boy, they should be able to match this person up with somebody else, with a boy or a girl, also, and then somebody who would be a good match for them based on the shadchan's expertise, assuming they have that. That's how it used to be before online, before this, before that. So obviously now there's all kinds of new criteria. Everybody has to have. This didn't. You have to understand. This didn't exist when I was dating. Maybe I should tell a little bit about how what the dating process was for me, because it's a little bit different than it was even for people, my contemporaries. So I lived in a little town called San Diego, all right, and at the time when I was ready to start dating, there were pretty much no single girls in town of meritable age who were interested in me anyway, for sure. So that was out the window. So my only chance was to date people from LA, and people, recommended people. And those people who were recommending were supposedly, they weren't official, how do you say, they weren't really shadchanim in the professional sense. They were just people who were concerned, people who were interested, people who cared, and people who knew other people. All right. So what this is before the internet. So if somebody recommended somebody, I would call them up, we'd talk, we saw if we connected on the phone. That was called online back then, by the way. Don't get confused. We connected online, but it didn't used to mean what it means now. So there's a personality matchup. She liked me, I liked her, or the other way around, or hopefully both. And then if it escalated to the point where there would be a meeting, so then we'd find a place to, public place to meet, eat, etc., etc. All right, whatever it was. So and at that date, really the main purpose of this physical date was to see if you could get along with each other in person. Okay, so our personalities match, our goals match, everything is all good. We want the same things in life. We want to build a Jewish house. We want to keep kosher. We want to go. We want regular shul going, regular Torah learning. Okay, so everything's all set up. Everything fits. Now, what's the next step? The next step is to see if you can actually get along together in the same room, in the same space, right? Obviously, there should also be some attraction, physical and otherwise. So once that date happens, then you see. So it didn't work out with the first few girls that I dated, and then I was introduced to the person who became my wife, and she lived very far away, was probably the furthest distance that I dated as yet. She lived then in Philadelphia. And so I gave her a call, and we spoke quite a few times. I wasn't planning on just meeting her on the second time. So we spoke almost every night for a few weeks. And then I bought a plane ticket to fly to Philadelphia for Shabbos and meet, and we'd go out to places, etc. All right. So we met, we went to a museum, went out for coffee, etc., etc. And while we were driving to the place where we were going to keep Shabbat that week, I was pulling. We stopped in a place to get flowers and wine, and as I was pulling out of the where my car was parked, another car hit me. Well, not hit me, hit the car. And so I was in a little. It was a rental car. I was a little bit shaken up, but it was almost Shabbat. It was like getting dark, and we had a couple of miles to drive still. And the guy, I said, I'm sorry, it's almost my Shabbat. I can't stay and take care of everything. Here's my phone number. I showed him my driver's license. He wrote down the number. He said, I'm sorry, we're going to need to do everything by the book. I said, why? And he said, I'm in police academy right now, and we learned that you have to do everything exactly by the book. We need to get a police officer to come here to write up a report. I'm like, are you serious? I'm like, we need a report about this. It's obviously, what it is. So anyway, so I pulled over to the side. He waves down a police officer while I'm waiting in the car for him to wave down a police officer. I hear who this girl who eventually became my wife saying over and over again, Gam Zula Tova, Gam Zula Tova, Gam Zula Tova. This too is for the good. And I said to myself that this is exactly what I'm looking for. I want somebody who, in this most stressful situation, will realize that even that is from Hashem. By the way, while I went out to go help the cop make up a report and everything, I got another cop came by and gave me a parking ticket for parking illegally while I was getting the whatever. It was a whole mess. Anyway, so we left the wine, we left the flowers, we parked the car in the closest place we could park. I hid the keys, and we walked 2 miles to where we kept Shabbat that week, without a change of clothes, without yeah. So that's what we eventually had to do. But was that a question, comment?
I said God bless.
Yeah, amen. So anyway, it was a stressful situation, but it taught me a few lessons. And one of the lessons that it taught me, and this is one thing I think is this is something that I've told most people who've asked my advice about dating. They've asked how long should we date? Like, once I know I like this person, is that enough? Like, we only dated for like once, twice, 3 times. Is there like a magic number? Or is that a magic amount of hours that we have to spend together? How do you know that you know? So I said, I usually say, and I think it's a pretty good piece of advice. You have to go through at least one hardship together, whether it means a fight between each other or a car accident, God forbid, hopefully not, nothing, dangerous to the body or anything. But something like that. You need to have some sort of stressful situation to see how the other person responds. My wife jokes now that she was saying Gamzula Tova because it wasn't her car anyway. What does she care if some guy she's dating gets in a car accident? I'm not sure that's what she was thinking then though. But as whatever the case may be, that's a very important sort of test of who the person is. Now I remember when I was in yeshiva, the Menal Rabbi Braun would give a famous like people from all over Muncie would come to hear this class he gave on dating. And one of the things he said is he told a story. You might have heard the story before. Now there's a guy and a girl, and they're dating, and they're driving down the road. They're on the freeway, and she takes his wallet out of the armrest area, and she throws it out the window. And he pulls over and says, "What did you do that for?" And she says, "Because I was testing you to see if you'd get angry." And he said, "Well, now open the door and get out of my car. I don't know if I passed or failed your test, but you definitely failed the test." In other words, Rabbi Braun would continue, you do not test somebody like that. When I say that I recommend that you go through some sort of hardship together, that doesn't mean it should be an artificial hardship. Like, let's see how this guy's going to react if I do this. Let's see how this girl reacts if I do this. That's not the hardship I'm talking about. It's important to know what the full personality of the person you're dating, and the full personality really comes out in stressful situations. But that doesn't mean you should basically create one yourself artificially, manufacture a stressful situation. That is the wrong thing to do. Right? The question about that.
No, but it's a really good point. I like that.
It's a piece of advice that I strongly I recommend to most people. But again, what we need to know when you're dating, one of the things you want to know is, how is this person going to help me build this home? Who is this person really? And we don't always know who somebody is. People wear, even especially now, people are wearing masks, but people have always been wearing masks, right? We always have different modes, as they're called in sociology. There's different modes of behavior depending on where you are and how you are. A joke that you can tell, at home might not be appropriate to tell, in the shul. Doesn't mean that the home is this naughty, nasty place. It's just a different kind of environment. It's supposed to be. And the same thing with the kind of behavior you see from somebody who you're dating. Obviously, people who are dating are on their best behavior, right? They want to. They're not trying to get rejected. They want to do whatever it takes to sort of win over to the person they're courting. Let's be honest. So you have to be yourself, but there's different modes of yourself, obviously. Right? Nobody. I hope nobody's trying to be somebody that they're completely not. Right? And except for that one case that I was mentioning earlier about the guy who got divorced within the week of Sheva Brachot. His wife, just to be more explicit, she wanted to wear a very revealing, rather revealing clothing to the Sheva Brachot. And he's like, that's not the level of religiosity that you claim to be. She's like, yeah, well, that was dating. That's called lying. Basically, that's not how we do things. We don't try to trick people into marrying us. We need to be honest, and the person needs to know exactly who you are. Now, when it comes to lying, there's the laws of Lashon Hara and the laws of proper speech have a lot of details about how you can speak about somebody who you're recommending for somebody else. Let's say you're talking to a guy, and the guy and you're trying, and a girl for him, and he tells you that he's looking for a girl who has brown hair. I'm just making this up. right? The girl you know has blonde hair. Should you tell her to color her hair? Like, what is it? It's just, and you think to yourself, this is ridiculous. Who cares what color your bride's hair is? She's going to be covering it anyway, or whatever. Like what's the difference what color her hair is? It's gonna change your home because she has this color hair or that color hair or whatever color nails she likes to paint. That doesn't matter. It shouldn't matter. If it matters to him, so it matters to him, and you shouldn't lie to him. And you shouldn't make up to the girl, you shouldn't tell her, just for this date, maybe color your hair, that's fake. That's false. That's a lie. So that's not how things are supposed to go. Both the man and the woman need to be attracted to each other, to the real person, right? It has to be who they really are. And so that needs to eventually somehow come out in the dating process. I know what you're going to say. Maybe not. And maybe you're not going to say this. Maybe you're going to think, maybe you're thinking to yourself right now, that's not how it used to be. Like, all the stories we hear about, like the shtetl, somebody got married after like a 1-hour date, or I know a Hasidic couple who they met in their parents' living room, and like they in like a little fishbowl. Everybody was watching them meet. They talked for like 3 minutes, and then the parents made up that they'd get married, and that's all. So you might have heard that, and the level of success in the past for these kinds of marriages to last might have been good, but that's not true anymore. The uptick in divorce rates, not just in the non-Jewish world, but even in the Jewish world, is unbelievable. Unbelievable. I have one child, and try not to be explicit about this. I have one child who so I have 4 daughters. So that's Kenai Nahara. So you won't know. Of all of her friends, she is the only one whose parents are not divorced. Of all of her friends, like all of them, not half, like all, 100% of her friends are children of divorce. I'm not saying, God forbid, I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with their parents, or that means that our Sholem bias is so great or something. That's not the implication here. The point is, divorce rates are high, and part of the reason is because we're not looking for the right things anymore. We're not looking for what we're supposed to be looking for, and that's to build a Jewish home. And and we haven't really found out if the person we're meeting is the person who's going to let that happen. Any questions about that so far? Now, we know that, or maybe we don't know. I should take that. Like, let's rewind a bit. Nowadays, there are people who suggest that there's very little difference between men and women. Okay, I would like to suggest that older studies and certainly my experience is that men and women are indeed different. They think differently, perhaps cultural, because maybe it's because of culture, maybe it's nature, maybe it's nurture. I'm not going to get into all that, but certainly men and women are usually different in a number of ways. And so what they are looking for in a spouse should not be exactly the same thing they're looking for in a friend. I'll repeat. What you're looking for in a spouse should not necessarily be what you're looking for in a friend. For example, for a guy, a good friend is somebody that you can argue well with. You can bounce ideas off of. You can joke around with. I'm not saying you shouldn't be able to do that with your wife. By all means, you should be able to have a nice, good argument every once in a while too. No problem with that. But you're not marrying a chavruta, as my Rebbeim would say. You're not marrying somebody who you're. And yes, you should learn with your wife, but you're not supposed to marry somebody just for that, or just like, oh, I like to bounce off ideas from her, No, for a man to marry a wife, one of the main reasons to marry her is to help build that home. And part of building that home is to get her opinion on things, obviously. Once she gives an opinion, that it's not a 50-50 anymore. Her opinion is at least 60%. Your opinion now is a 40%. Because a woman's bina, a woman's understanding of practical things is so much greater than a man's. So a man should be able to find a compromise. Compromise is a very important thing in a home, which has a lot to do, actually, interestingly enough, some of you know this, some of you don't, with the halacha of mezuzah, right? We know, some of you may or may not know, that there's an argument in the Talmud between Hillel and Shammai about which way a mezuzah should go. So Hillel says that a mezuzah, just like a Torah scroll in the ark, should go vertically, should go up and down. And Shammai says no, it's just like a tefillin. So what's a mezuzah more like tefillin or like a Torah scroll? So Shammai says it's more like tefillin. Tefillin is sideways, it's horizontal. So you should put a mezuzah horizontally. So Ashkenazic custom is to do what? To put it on a slant, because that's a compromise. It's not exactly up and down, and it's not left to right. It's right in between. It's a diagonal. That's the only halacha I can think of where there's a compromise like that. Usually Hillel says this, Shammai says that. We either go with Hillel or Shammai, usually Hillel. There's never like, oh, okay, he says that, he says that. Like, for example, menorah, right? Hillel says to start from the left. Shammai says to start from the right. Have you ever heard anybody say, let's start in the middle? Let's light the middle candle first. Let's like the menorah, there's three on the third night. Let's light the second candle, and then, go left. No, nobody says that. Nobody says you go to the middle. The only halakha I can think of, with perhaps the exception of with the Sefer Torah you get out of the ark, when you get a Sefer Torah out of there, the only exception I can think of is the mezuzah, because the house is supposed to be a place of compromise. It's supposed to be a place where that there has to be some sort of a give and take, and there has to be some give, obviously. Now, part of the deal here is that yeah, here we go. It says here, this wonderful book called The Death of Cupid. If you don't have it and you're dating, you should probably get it. It's highly recommended. It's written by Rav Nachum Braverman and Shimon Appisdorf. Leviathan Press. Never heard of it. Okay. Anyway, it must be a big company. It's a joke. All right. Anyway, tough crowd. So it says,
well, I'm not sure if I'm supposed to interject. Sometimes it's like weird timing. You can't. Sometimes it's very difficult.
All right, so they wrote this book in 1996, 20 years after Shel Silverstein, and they wrote, the ability to make a commitment to everything that marriage consists of turns on three essential questions. Number one, do we have life goals that we can share? Okay. Goodness. Not important. Do we have life goals that we can share? Number two, and we talked about that, life goals, like what are your goals? You need to have, first of all, one of the ways, by the way, to know that you're ready for marriage is that you have actual life goals. When I say the word life goals, you're like, what does that mean? Does that mean like waking up in the morning? So no, that's not what it means. It means you have like a vision of what you want to look like at 119. You have a vision of what you want. Kids? Do you want the grandkids? Do you want to live in a big community, a small community? Do you want to do outreach? Do you want do you want outreach to be done for you? There's all kinds of different lives that people can live. And do you want to give classes? Do you want to participate in classes? Do you want a big house, a small house? Do you want a summer house? All of these are your plans. And I'm just thinking, in terms of religiosity, but they should, also in terms of what you want for your career. Do you want to be a doctor, a nurse, a lawyer, a president of the United States? Whatever it is that you have as like a vision of goal of what you want to do, the person you're marrying should be on board. Not just with lip service, but like actually practical help. Do you share those life goals? Do you have life goals? Right? And then you find somebody who you actually share these life goals with, who is interested in you being successful. So that's very important. Next, does the person I'm dating have the necessary character traits for us to build a successful life together? Character traits are important. All right. If you notice, I know somebody in the secular world. I know somebody who had who was dating for a while and had, when he was dating, something he called the Waitress Test. I'm not a big fan of this, by the way, but I'm gonna throw it out there so you know where I'm going. He had this test. If the person he was dating was more attractive than the waitress who was serving them. That was his little test. Now, if somebody I cared about is dating this guy, I'll tell him not to date this guy. These are not good character traits. That's kind of gross, right? This is not how somebody's supposed to be thinking about people. Comparing beauty, comparing whatever physical stuff like that. That's not how. It's not a game like that. Everybody's different, and everybody's got qualities that may or may not fit with other people. I know another guy who would date anybody almost, as long as she wasn't a preschool teacher. Like that was his rule. No preschool teachers. Happens to be in the end he married a preschool teacher. But anyway, that's sort of an irony. But she wasn't a preschool teacher when they were dating. Anyway, but the point is that this is mishugas. Somebody came up with this plan of she has to be more attractive than the waitress, or she has to earn this much money, or she has to have a white tablecloth, or she has to not be a preschool teacher. These are all just ridiculous things. They make no sense. Where did you come up with this rule? But whatever that rule is, the only rule you really should have is, does this person have a good character? Right? Is this person polite, not just to me, but to others? I remember, I used to be a public school teacher. I had one student who had a boyfriend who was sort of a tough guy and kind of abusive. And I'm not a counselor, I'm an English teacher, right? So I had the opportunity to talk to her. I said, like, why are you with this guy? He's obviously making you very upset. She says, oh, he usually treats me like a princess. I'm like, but he beats up everybody else. She says, yeah, but to him, I'm a princess. I'm like, that's what do you think that means? Like, while he's trying to impress you, you're a princess. As soon as he doesn't want to impress you anymore, you'll be to him like everybody else is to him, and he'll beat you up, which is what he was doing. So that's not obviously that's not the good. That's an extreme. Obviously, we're not in that class of people right now. Obviously, I hope. But obviously, we don't want anybody who's abusive in any way. And in fact, interestingly enough, the Talmud, this might be a surprise to you. The Talmud has dating advice. And one of the things it says is that a person should marry, a father should want his daughter to marry a Talmid Chacham, a scholar. And you'd think, oh, it's because, then the father will have a chavruta, then the father, that's not what it says. You know what the Talmud says? You know why a father should want a son-in-law who's a Talmid Chacham? Because a boor, which is like an ignoramus, is going to be abusive to his wife. In other words, already the Talmud is concerned with a woman being treated properly and with respect. And she won't be treated with respect by somebody who's not a Talmid Chacham, says the Talmud. Interesting. And that's very important, obviously. You want to make sure you're marrying somebody who's got good character traits in every single possible regard that you can possibly see. Obviously, a 3-minute date is not going to, not going to help you determine that, because again, besides the fact that they're wearing a mask and they're not who they really are, et cetera, et cetera, also you just don't have the opportunity to see them in action, to see who they really are. And that's part of why in the Jewish world, very often, there's more than just a girl investigating a guy or dating a guy. He's also being investigated, not investigated for real, not with like professionals, but he's being looked into by other people for her, either the shadchan or her parents, or somebody's looking into his family, asking questions. Well, it was what yeshiva did he go to? What he got kicked out? Why did he get kicked out? Oh, because he went to somewhere he shouldn't have gone, or maybe he went to somewhere he should have gone, and the yeshiva was wrong, and he stood up to them. Whatever it is, whatever the case may be, you have to investigate. You have to find out what happened. Like, for example, let's say I don't know. Yeah, I'm not going to go into detail before I go into a rant. And of course, part of all this is also obviously chemistry. Right? Not everybody is a good fit for everybody else. There's no such thing as a girl who's perfect for anybody. There's no such thing as a guy who's perfect for anybody. Right? Everybody's different, and certain things can be sort of uncomfortable or toxic, or even like just not interesting for different people. Just forgetting about people for a moment. Somebody was just telling me that they bought a new shampoo. Okay, so it has nothing to do with people. All right, so somebody bought a new shampoo and they used it, and while they were using that shampoo, they became nauseous from the smell of the shampoo. Right? Does that mean nobody else has ever smelled this? No, it's for that person. That shampoo is not the right fit. Same thing with people. People are just not the right fit for each other sometimes. Everybody who's listening probably knows this. You can think of somebody who rubbed you the wrong way in a class, a classmate, a friend. Forget about dating for a moment. Just in any human situation, they're just people who are just like not interesting to you, and you can't share with them what you want to share with them. You're just not interested. So that's chemistry. And there are this book, this Death of Cupid, has exercises for how to find out your life goals. One of them, interestingly enough, is the self-interview. You ask yourself questions. I'll give you a couple of examples here. What kind of this is question 2A. What kind of person would make the so that's not a good one. It's too complicated, and it's not a good question. If I were guaranteed that I would be successful, I would blank. What would you do if you were guaranteed to be successful? Like buy a lottery ticket, go to college,
Get a fancy car.
Get a fancy car, whatever it is that you would, however you would fill in that blank, that probably tells you a lot about who you are and what your life goals are. A famous idea that they mentioned here, and also mentioned, I think we talked about this in the very first classes that we had, and again, this is kind of on the negative a little bit, but it's worth it's an interesting exercise to write your own epitaph. How would you want to be remembered? Remember me as a peacekeeper. Now, whatever it is, right? here lies a person who, what do you want to have accomplished by the time you're 120, right? You want to have lots of kids, you want to, amass a lot of money, build lots of communities, build one community really well. What is your goal? What is the so what is your goal? So that's part of knowing yourself, and that's a very important part of dating, because if you don't have life goals, you probably shouldn't be dating yet. You're not ready. You need to have an idea of where you're going if you want to get there. So we have there's a lot to say about dating and character traits. I think the three most important character traits you definitely want in basically anybody, but certainly the person you're marrying. You want them to be kind, you want them to be honest, and you want them to be loyal. You don't want lies, you don't want anger all the time, and you don't want somebody who cares about other people more than they care about you. Marriage is supposed to be very intimate, obviously, very A and B conversation, and everybody else should see their way out. It's supposed to be very, very, very close, and that's one of the things that it means that that it's bad for man to be levado, for a man to be alone, is that you need, every human needs intimacy, needs somebody who they can be very, very close with, and that isn't shared with anybody else. And that's part of a successful marriage, which we'll talk about in the next classes. But it's obviously something you need to look for before you get married. You have to, what's this is you're gonna marry this person. You're gonna hopefully live, until 120 with this person. You want to make sure that it's somebody who you can get along with, and somebody who's kind, and etc. All the other midot that we just mentioned. I'm sure you might have questions, and this is probably a good time. I'm going to stop the live feed to Facebook, and I'll stop the recording and open it up to any questions you might have. Next class is going to be the specifics of an actual wedding ceremony, and we'll talk there a little bit more probably about the ideal marriage and wedding and marriage.
I have a question, Rabbi.
Great.